Picture this. It's a mid-July afternoon. The sun is just absolutely beating down. You're heading out the door for work, so you flip on the AC, give your dog a quick pat on the head, and lock up. You probably assume they're totally safe and perfectly comfortable, right? Well, the reality of how our dogs actually experience heat inside our modern homes is this hidden physiological drama that's playing out while we're completely unaware. Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're looking way past the thermostat to uncover the real, hidden dangers of summer heat for our pets.
I really want you to think about that question for a second. Is your home truly safe for your dog right now? We kind of just rely on this assumption that turning on the air conditioning is some sort of magic shield. But as we'll discover today, canine biology mixed with just subtle environmental shifts in our living spaces, well, they can turn a comfortable living room into a high-stakes survival situation in just a matter of hours.
Okay, let's dive into this. Chapter 1, the summer heat threat.
To really grasp this threat, we have to establish a biological baseline. You see, dogs are just built differently than we are. They naturally run hotter from the moment they wake up. A dog's normal body temperature sits somewhere between 101 and 102.5 degrees Fahrenheit, whereas we humans sit around 98.6. Because they start at this much higher baseline, their margin for error is frankly terrifyingly slim. The very moment their internal temperature creeps even slightly above 103 degrees, they cross a threshold straight into danger. It's honestly like watching a slow-motion documentary. A slightly warm afternoon isn't just a bit uncomfortable for them, it's a rapidly escalating biological emergency.
Now, what's really interesting here is Chapter 2, Why Dogs Cannot Sweat. We naturally assume that because we can just sweat our way through a brutal heat wave, our dogs must have a similar built-in relief valve, but they don't. Humans rely on eccrine glands, which basically cover our bodies in watery sweat that evaporates and cools us down. Dogs, on the other hand, are covered in apocrine glands. These glands secrete an oily, opaque substance right into the hair follicle. It acts as a pheromone marker, not a cooling mechanism. Now, dogs do actually have eccrine glands on their paw pads, but those only exist to increase friction for running. They contribute almost absolutely nothing to actually cooling the dog down.
So, because they can't sweat, they have to pant, and the physiological drama of panting is incredibly intense. To expel excess heat, a dog's breathing rate will violently surge from a calm 40 breaths per minute all the way up to an exhausting 400 breaths per minute. Basically, they inhale cooler, drier air, exchange it deep down in their lungs, and then rapidly exhale hot, moist air right over their dripping tongue to create evaporative cooling. It is a massive, totally exhausting mechanical effort for them.
But here is the absolute critical vulnerability in that entire system: high humidity. When the air, whether that's inside your house or outside in the yard, is already saturated with moisture, that evaporative cooling process just breaks down. The hot moisture from the dog's lungs literally has nowhere to go, so their panting becomes completely ineffective, and all that dangerous heat just gets trapped inside their body, rising degree by degree.
Which brings us to Chapter 3, the short-nosed struggle.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why a specific group of dogs are fighting a profound internal battle just to take a single breath. Breeds like bulldogs, pugs, and boxers are at a severe disadvantage due to something called brachycephalic obstructive airway syndrome, or BOAS. Because their internal respiratory anatomy is compressed, their primary cooling mechanism, panting, is fundamentally compromised right from the start. Think of it like a cascading system failure. First, pinched nostrils severely restricts the initial intake of air. Next, an elongated soft pellet physically blocks the airflow right in the back of the throat. So when they try to pant 400 times a minute to cool down, all that friction causes the airway to swell even further. They physically cannot remove the carbon dioxide from their bloodstream fast enough. It becomes this rapid, vicious cycle, where the very act of trying to cool down generates even more internal heat and stress.
Moving on to Chapter 4, Spotting the Warning Signs.
When a dog's cooling system fails, the transition from mild discomfort to a full-blown, life-threatening crisis is startlingly fast. You absolutely need to know the breaking point. 106 degrees. I really want you to let that number sink in. At 106 degrees Fahrenheit, a dog's body hits the critical threshold for heat stroke. This is the point of sheer metabolic meltdown. Organs literally begin to cook. The risk of seizure spikes, comas are possible, and they absolutely fundamentally cannot cool themselves down anymore. It is a critical drop-everything emergency.
So the crucial point here is knowing the physical manifestations that happen right before we hit that catastrophic number. Watch for frantic, totally uncontrollable panting paired with thick, ropey saliva. That's a clear sign they are severely dehydrating. Look at their gums. If they shift from a normal healthy pink to bright red, grayish, or even purple, it means oxygen is failing to circulate. If they're showing lethargy, if they're unsteady on their feet, or if they have sudden vomiting and diarrhea, their body is actively breaking down in real time.
And I have to firmly emphasize this specific hazard: the car. You might think a cloudy, breezy 60-degree day is perfectly safe. It is absolutely not. The greenhouse effect inside a closed vehicle actually traps the dog's radiated body heat and moisture, which rockets the interior temperature to a lethal 130 degrees in mere minutes. A car literally becomes a death trap in under 15 minutes. Just never, ever risk it.
Okay, let's take a breath and move to Chapter 5, Creating a Cool Zone.
So, how do we actually protect them? Well, let's see how this all builds together. We can take all this data and transform our homes into a sanctuary by building a perfect daily timeline for your pet. In the morning, close your blinds. Blocking those direct sun rays prevents the indoor greenhouse effect from ever even starting. By midday, rely on a programmable thermostat to maintain a nice, steady, safe temperature. And then, in the afternoon, deploy specialized cooling tools right on top of your hardest, coolest floors. Let's break down those optimal conditions. For most dogs out there, an ambient indoor temperature between 73 and 79 degrees Fahrenheit is absolutely perfect. But remember our brachycephalic, short-nosed friends? Yeah, they need it closer to 71 degrees. Try to maximize their access to tile or wooden floors, which naturally pull the heat right away from their bodies. And definitely invest in pet water fountains. Flowing water stays cooler, and it really encourages that vital hydration they need to be able to pant effectively. Now, cooling mats are a fantastic addition to this cool zone, but you really need to know the difference between them. Gel mats are pressure activated, and they're great for short 2 to 3 hour bursts of relief. Phase change mats physically shift from a solid to a liquid, which offers much more prolonged cooling. However, here is an absolutely urgent warning for all dog owners. If you have a dog that loves to chew, be incredibly careful with gel mats. Even the gels that are heavily marketed as non-toxic can cause severe, sometimes fatal, gastrointestinal blockages if swallowed. But look, even with the absolute perfect preparation, the worst can still happen. If your dog starts showing signs of overheating, immediately move them to a cool, shaded place. Next, spray their coat with cool water and rub it all the way down to the skin level. And listen carefully to this next part. Never, ever use ice or freezing water. Ice water actually constricts the surface blood vessels in their skin, which actively traps the lethal heat deep inside their core. Once they are wet with cool water, rush them to an emergency veterinary clinic immediately. Don't wait around for them to look better. As we wrap up this explainer, I just want you to look around your living space. We know they run hotter, we know they literally can't sweat, and we know exactly how incredibly fast things can go wrong. So ask yourself, if the heat peaked right now at this very second, would your dog's cool zone be ready? Don't wait for the swelter to hit. Prepare their sanctuary today.